Hello out there. It's always my excitement to welcome you to Cross-Cultural Experiences. My name is Uche Onyebadi. Now, if you're new to this forum, all I do is I invite a guest who must have traveled, from his or her culture of origin to some other place, had the usual experience, maybe unusual experience, and then decides to tell us what that experience was, but more importantly, what did the person learn from it? Because we are in a global community that is so huge, so wide. All right. Now I have the pleasure to welcome Sharrona to this forum. Sharrona, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I am fine. I admire the backdrop. Can you explain it again?
Yeah, it's really it's a piece of the cover of one of my books. The book is called Do I Know You? From Face Blindness to Super Recognition. And my amazing editor suggested that we reach out to this face blind autistic documentary artist
Okay.
who does work for the New York Times and commission a cover. And the artist just did the most extraordinary job. So I love it and I want to put it up whenever I can.
It is so nice, and I like the title. Do I know you? Okay, explain, introduce yourself. Let our, whoever that is viewing this know you. Since you've already posed the question, do I know you?
My name is Sharrona Pearl. I'm the Andrews Chair of Interdisciplinary Studies at the John V. Roach Honors College here at Texas Christian University. I've only been in that role for a little over a year now. I moved with my
Okay.
family from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where we lived for 16 years. Prior to that, I lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Prior to that, I lived in Cambridge, England. Prior to that, I moved to the United States from Toronto, Canada, where I'm from. And along the way, I spent a year in Jerusalem, Israel.
Okay, now you are the perfect guest for this. I was also in Toronto, which I found to be a very diverse, city. I really enjoyed myself there in Toronto. I think I was there in 2019 for a conference, but I spent like 3 days, but I really fell in love with the city.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most diverse cities in the world. And I think it is also, although this may be out of date, but a very high number of people who live in Toronto, something like 70, 80%,
Yeah.
were not born in Toronto. So it has a lot of
Ah.
mix of people coming in and out. And it's really a significant part of the fabric of the city.
Okay, one of the things I recall about it was that a friend of mine from Bangladesh took me to a Pakistani restaurant and we ate good food. All right, let's share your experience at this point. Wherever it is, whatever you want to talk about, go ahead, please.
So I'm going to share two experiences.
Okay, yeah.
One is a little bit about me making an awkward transition to a different culture, and the other one is about other people not appreciating that cultures are not necessarily that different. So when I was a graduate student, I was on
Okay.
an international student visa because, of course, I was Canadian and I moved to the United States. And there was all of this mandatory training for international students, which makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. There were various workshops on visa issues, and they also had a lot of training on different cultural norms, which was very
Yeah.
interesting to me because I learned about other countries' customs, about
Yeah.
shaking hands and eye contact and bowing and appropriate distance, all of which in a weird way I felt more like the tourist learning from other people. But the thing that really struck me was the workshop that I had to go to on the season called Winter. Now, there was this whole workshop that we all had to go to, including me moving from Canada, on appropriate winter attire and how, for example, you might look outside and see that it's sunny and assume that it's warm out, but it's not going to be
It's
warm
not one.
because in some parts of the world, like say England, if it's sunny for the 3 days a year that it is, it's also warm. That's certainly not the case in the crisp New England weather. But for me, coming from Canada, the guidelines on how to buy a winter coat and what mittens are was certainly not relevant. And I thought it was very funny because in that moment, it became clear to me in a way that was clear to me in all kinds of other ways as well, that there were some vast differences between Canada and the US. And you might not believe me, but there are biological differences, there are differences in attitudes toward multiculturalism and relationship to government and the role that people expect government to play in their lives, all kinds of things. But in many, many ways, I would have more in common as a person from Toronto with somebody from any number of metropolitan areas in the world than I might with a Canadian from a small town
So,
on the west
okay.
in the west, you know. But one of the things that pretty much all Canadians have in common is that we understand winter.
Okay.
Now, people from Quebec
Yeah.
or Northern Ontario are probably laughing because they call Toronto Southerners, right?
Hmm.
But to have to go to a session on a winter coat, which is fine, I understand why they made me do it, but that was one place where weather becomes a cultural binding that
Right.
supersedes geopolitical boundaries in a particular way.
Okay. You remind me when I was traveling from Nigeria to Ethiopia in Addis. And so, like you said, when it's out sunny out there, then you imagine that the weather is just fine. So the advertisement that time was that we have 13 months of sunshine. So I assumed that everything was okay. So I was dressed like this, and it was around July. Jesus, when I got there, I was feeling cold. I said, what? But you could see the sunshine, but it was absolutely cold,
Yeah.
because they are high, I think 7,000 or so feet above sea
Right.
level.
And people's learning curves on this are very flat. My husband is from London, England, and
Yeah,
I've known many Brits or people from France as well who moved to the US, who moved to New England, and they'll
yeah.
see the sun and they'll put on a t-shirt in February.
And
But every time, the next day it'll be sunny again, and again they'll put on a t-shirt. Like, remember how it was cold yesterday?
yes, I guess that is just something they're used to. You see the sun and you say, okay, that's fine. You go out and then you run back home.
No. Yeah.
All right, you were talking about another experience you had.
Right. So this one is more linguistic, and
Ah, okay.
I so I speak English, and
Yeah,
my Hebrew is pretty fluent. It's not native, but I went to an immersion school and I
yeah.
lived in Israel, but it's pretty good. My French is terrible, and don't look at my CV, it says something else.
You are doing much better than most of us, including me.
Well, I had to pass French and German exams for grad school, but and
Yeah.
I took French because Canadians all have to take French, and I took it for far longer than it would seem based on my French. But I was living in Israel, and it's a very different society in many ways.
Yeah.
It's the shtick is that Israelis will trample you to get on the bus, but then they'll carry you over their shoulder to make sure you get on. It's a
Oh,
direct,
okay.
warm, busy society. And the like politeness words, which are very important in Canada,
Yeah.
are like kind of silly. Like it's very silly and formal to sort of politely say, please, if it doesn't bother you, would you mind passing me the whatever? Like if
Okay.
you're at one end of the table and the potatoes are at the other end of the table and you want the potatoes, you kind of command someone to pass them to you. Like the verb formation is kind of like, give me potatoes. And to
Okay.
my Canadian mind, this was incredibly aggressive. But if I were to say in my Hebrew, please, would you possibly pass me the potato? Everyone would laugh. Like it would be ridiculous. So, but I couldn't, as a Canadian, for a very long time when I was living there, bring myself to order someone to give me food. So basically, I only ever ate what I could reach. Like I
Oh,
could not like if it was far away, I just did not have it.
forget about it.
Get it? It's off. Now by the end, like you acclimate, and it's funny because I notice even now when I speak in Hebrew, my affect changes a little bit than when I
Yeah.
speak in English. But yeah, no, couldn't do it. So that was a way that culture infuses in language that really
Yes.
changes behavior across spaces.
Yeah, also remind me the first time I went to Tanzania, in East Africa, I was so shocked. The taxi driver, well, not the taxi, this public transportation, they call them matatus. So I got into one, and then you pay at some point. And then this guy was asking us for, to pay. And I
Yeah.
was coming from a culture that was a little bit more aggressive. And the guy just said, "Oh, please, may I have your fare?" I said, "What? You're asking me, please, may I have your I was coming from a place where, give me your money. Don't you know you sign?" So this one was just very polite, and I was so shocked at the
Yeah.
politeness.
And it's very destabilizing because
Yeah,
like you're ready to respond in like
yeah.
one culture, and then you have to recalibrate and be like, no, no.
No, 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 no. This is different. So everything they did was, please, may I?
Yeah,
Please, may I? So I had to say, okay, whatever level of aggression you have in you,
right.
reduce the.
Bring it down. Bring it down.
But it's amazing that you decided, okay, if the food is far away, I'm not asking anybody. Let it go. Let it
Let
just
it
go.
go. I don't need the potatoes that badly. I mean, eventually,
Yeah.
I did. But it's,
But
the way these verb formulations or these
yeah,
language formulations stay on,
yeah,
it's a different kind of accent, right? It
yes,
like people can identify. I mean, I don't have an Israeli accent anyway, but the way that you build language, people can
yeah.
immediately identify that you're from a different culture.
All right. I always ask my guests, so what did you learn from those experiences?
So I think in the first instance, I learned that culture can divide us in particular ways, but sometimes there are overarching themes that unite us. And of course, there are many. That's a function of the condition of being human. There's relationships and care and connections, but this was actually such a different kind of
Uh,
uniting force, weather, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
this kind of bigger thing that creates its own unexpected culture, perhaps. And in the second instance, I learned that there are so many hidden ways for you to be in or outside a community, right? There are the obvious ways, but there are
Yeah.
ways, and sometimes those are important things to hang on to, right? Things that feel like true and important values to you, even if you're in a setting where different things are valued. And sometimes it can be something as silly as a verb formulation, right? And
Right.
so there's a process of self-examination that happens anytime you're anywhere else. And
Else, okay.
these are, in my research, I work on tacit knowledge a little bit, the things that we know that we don't know that we know. And I think one of the challenges of tacit knowledge is how do you know what you don't know? Or how do you know what you
Right.
don't know it's a thing?
So go ahead, sorry.
One of the best ways to excavate or bring to light these hidden knowledges is to be in another place, right? So I think those kinds of experiences are so profound. They're so important.
Yes, and then the whole thing is to adapt because we are in another environment altogether. So adaptation becomes what will lead you, to the next phase until you go back to where you are more comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you become comfortable in a different place,
Or
right?
you can actually become comfortable in a different place. There's a young man I talked to. He said, he was in another culture altogether. And now his parents were telling him, when are you coming home? And he said, Mom, Dad, I think I'm home here. He had adapted completely and adjusted to the society.
Or people who have traveled a lot as
Yeah,
children, maybe because of their parents' jobs, they're
yeah,
good at creating instant community anywhere they are because they
right.
had to, right?
Okay, I want to thank you for your time
Thank you.
and I wish you well. And now, any other person who's watching and you want to be part of this, how to reach me, it's cross-cultural experiences. Don't forget the S, cross-cultural experiences at gmail.com. You email me, I email back, and then we can have a wonderful conversation. So, Sharrona, thank you very much again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.